As a college football nation, we get so excited for these Power 5 matchups, especially coming out of the gate week one. It seemed like we had a ton of huge matchups: Alabama, Wisconsin, Arizona State, Texas A&M, Louisville, Auburn, Ohio State, Virginia Tech, Michigan, Utah. Yeah, we had some nice matchups, but consider this. Including BYU and Notre Dame, we have 66 Power 5 teams, and we had 10 Power 5 games. So we only had 20 teams playing Power 5 games in week one. We're going to have a few more in week two and then scattered throughout the season, culminated by the ACC and the SEC getting together 4 times the final weekend. But there aren't enough of these games. Still, we're going to take what we have here and still rate each conference, give them a grade. We've run through the SEC, 13-1, gave the SEC an A, the Big Ten, the Pac-12, and the Big 12. Now we stop with the ACC, which many consider to be the weakest of the 5 conferences. Going into the season, I had the ACC rated as the 4th best conference behind the Big Ten, and I had a narrow gap there between the Big Ten and the ACC. Now, on the surface, the ACC played pretty well in week one at 10-4. 0-4 against the Power 5. So there were no significant wins for this conference. None. Florida State, Clemson, Georgia Tech did not play anyone. No one played anyone that beat anyone. Those 10 victories were inconsequential. None of them mattered. The 4 losses, Virginia Tech lost at home to Ohio State. That's certainly nothing to be embarrassed about. That's not a knock against the ACC. Virginia Tech, we shall see without their quarterback for 4 to 8 weeks how well they play. But generally, going into the season, Virginia Tech considered a fringe on the outside top 25 team and maybe the 5th, 6th best team in the ACC, losing to maybe the best team in the country. No big deal there. Louisville, 3rd or 4th best team in the league, losing to Auburn, neutral site. They lost by a touchdown. They could have gotten blown away, but they kept it close and almost won, lost by a touchdown. So that's to the ACC's credit slightly, but they didn't win the game. UCLA, Virginia, again, it's a low tier ACC team, Virginia. One of the 3 or 4 worst teams in the league, losing to a team that could make the college football playoff on the road by 18 points. They didn't lose 50-0. Not a bad loss for the ACC there, Virginia, UCLA. The other loss wasn't horrible either. South Carolina beat North Carolina. The Tar Heels, most of us thought, outplayed South Carolina for most of the game, gave up a long touchdown run to Chris Carson late and lost 17-13. So North Carolina loses that game 17-13. So that means 0-4. So that's the black and white. The results are 0-4. Now, were the games fair? Were they close? Yes. The ACC didn't have a Clemson lose to a mid-level team in another conference, or Georgia Tech or somebody like that. They had teams from their conference play like seeded teams or much higher seeded teams like UCLA and Ohio State, and they lost the games. So 0-4 against the Power 5, but again, they were not bad losses by any stretch. So considering that, if you go just by 0-4 and then winning 10 games that don't really matter against the group of 5 and the FCS, then I would give this league a D. But considering the games were competitive, very competitive across the board, South Carolina, UCLA, Auburn, and Ohio State winning those games over the ACC, going to give the ACC a C. Now, we're not really going to know how the ACC fared against specifically the SEC until we get all the way to week 12, when South Carolina plays Clemson, Florida, Florida State, Georgia, Georgia Tech, and Louisville, Kentucky. Those are the games that are going to be interesting to see how the ACC fares. They did quite well last year against the SEC. So I've got a C for the ACC, going 0-4 against the Power 5, but respectable losses, 10-4 overall. Let's talk it up. Watch all the videos. I've got 5 for the Power 5 conferences. Gave everyone a grade for week one right here on Mark Rogers TV.